Hey, my name is Clay. This is my Cromat deck. Alright, so here's our Legend Cromat, very versatile. A couple of my decks, these first ones are more about versatility because we play in big multiplayer groups, so you want a lot of different options, handle a bunch of different things. This is my land base, not as expensive as you'll see by some, but pretty good 5 color. So you've got just the 2 ability to fetch, and then you've got all the standard Alara block tri-lands come into play tapped, but other than that they work well. Then you got Mirrodin's Core, and then all the Panorama cards from the Alara block as well. Just fetch different basics. Terminal Moraine just to fetch a basic as well. And then some people don't like them, but I like the layer land, so I'm running 3 of them in here: Dromar's Cavern, Treva's Ruins, and Rith's Grove. And then my Gemstone Mine. And you just got a bunch of basic lands in here. We can skip past all those. Basics fill out the rest of the land based. Then we get in my creatures. This is one of the best ones, a versatile board wiper. Whenever you play a Spirit Arcane spell, it destroys all permanents with the same cost. Get into the Onna cards, which are fantastic because they're very versatile. They work well with the card I just showed because you can stack both of the triggers of whenever you play the Spirit Arcane spell. So if you need to return these before you destroy something, you can. So you've got the Destroy Artifact, the Draw card, the Bounce a Creature, Destroy Enchantment, and then we get into returning target arcane card from your graveyard to your hand. This is fantastic when you can return Death Denied, which allows you to recycle a bunch of cards from your graveyard. And the Blinking Spirit's probably the single best creature in the game because it's recurring trigger off of whenever a player plays a spirit card. Bounce it back to your hand for free. Waxmane Baku is great because it only, no matter how many key counters you build up, it only costs 1 mana to remove X counters, so you don't have to pay 1 for each counter you remove. It's a really good control card to swing through for the win. This is just a free hit just about every turn, especially when you get the Blinking Spirit out because you can trigger its protection and swing in without a blocker. Sire of the Storm, just good for card draw. Rushing Tide Zubera, more card draw. Kodama, allowing you to take some of your bigger creatures and swing through with Trample. Myojin, another good board wipe. Kind of tough to bring out with 8 mana, 3 of it being white, but I haven't had too much problem. And Aim's really good because you can return a bunch of spirit cards from your graveyard to your hand. And in my game, you often get a lot of cards in the graveyard. A lot of people with mass board removal. Azami's Familiar. He's just really good card draw. Allows you to kind of have like a Miri's Gal type of tutor. Tell Her a Tale is just more control. And tap or untap target creature. This is a really good card because it allows you to, if this stays in play, it allows you to keep building up, and you can throw that on the protection guy and eventually get him real big to where he's swinging through for a lot of damage. It's another good control card, preventing them from blocking when you build up a big guy. Drift of Phantasms, the Spirit, also good for tutoring for a few of the key cards here, which we'll discuss here in a minute with his transmutability. This guy's in here just merely for the Soul Shift. Like I said, a lot of cards get put into our graveyard in our games. We often have big multiplayer games. A lot of people run in removal. So double Soul Shift allows you to bring cards back to your hand. This is the guy that gets the biggest most of the time in this deck, especially when you have the ability to return a lot of cards to your hand. Harbinger of Spring, another great card. Just protection from just about everything your opponents are going to have. So he's a free swing through with 2/1. Soul Shift when he dies, and he's another good target to put +1/+1 counters on. Kijimaro, this guy is in here purely for meta. We've got some guys that put in a lot of tokens in their deck, so it's good to be able to remove them with his ability. Arashi, another great card for big removal. You can either wipe the board with flying creatures or just deal individual damage. An name's really good when you have the ability to pull stuff out of your graveyard with Death Denied. So he's usually the card that I use to put a bunch of spirits in my graveyard that I later when I bring back to my hand. Arobi's fantastic because he puts in 3/3 flyer every time you play a spirit spell. And with Blinking Spirit, that's a lot of flyers in play really quick. This guy in here just for the big soul shift, just in case one of my big guys gets put away. Bounteous Kirin. This guy rarely stays in play very long. People are quick to remove him, but he's fantastic while he's out. Spirit Undell is pretty much in here for her forecast ability, allowing you to swing through with Shadow on some of your bigger creatures. And Infernal Kirin is great disruption, especially when you have recurring spirits that you can cast over and over again. Plus it gives you a peek at the player's hand regardless if you're not making them discard, you at least know what they've got coming up. And Wall of Reverence, this is another card that everybody loves to hate. This very rarely stays in for more than a turn. Death Denied, this is one of the best cards in here is once we get into spells because you're returning several cards from your graveyard to your hand. Soulless Revival, another good return from graveyard card. Plus it splices onto Arcane. It's another good mechanic in this deck. Unfortunately when you splice you don't trigger the play a Arcane spell on any of the creatures, but it's still really good. Choice of Damnation is one of the most enjoyable cards to play in this deck just because you can make them sack a lot of permanents or take a lot of damage. Most of the time early on they're willing to take the damage, but later on in the game when they've got so many permanents they have no choice but to take the damage and they're already low at that point. Hideous Laughter, just another good mass removal or just to weaken the other player's creatures as it is an instant. Blessed Breath, just protection with another splice on the Arcane. Evermind, big card draw with its splice on the Arcane ability. Another card draw. Glacial Ray, this hasn't been that good and I've been considering taking it out just because 2 damage in EDH is not really anything specific or great, but have been able to splice it a few times. Kodama's Reach, just good for 5-color mana fetch. Ribbons of the Rakai, it's great. You end up typically drawing 4 or 5 cards with it. Eerie Procession, I usually use that to go and grab a Death Denied, but other times, you know, you're able to be a little bit more versatile with what you grab in different situations. Always run at least, or try to run at least one artifact enchantment hate card. Other than the creatures, I also like to have a spell to do it. This is just another one for evasion to try and get my creatures through when I've pumped them up with a lot of +1/+1 counters. Ethereal Haze, just a fog. Lava Spike, 3 damage to target player. This is another one I'm considering taking out, but it is only 1 red mana, so it's not too bad. Toys of Night and Day, just a little bit of control. Psychic Puppetry, same thing, just a little bit of control. This is a purely meta card right here. I have a couple of opponents that run a lot of enchantments, a lot of just enchantment-based decks, so that's in here for their decks. Eye of Nowhere. The only downside of this card is it is a sorcery, not an instant, but it is an arcane spell, so that's why it's in here. Over Boomerang. Rend Flesh, destroy target non-spirit. Most of the time that's going to be able to target anything. Better than non-black, non-artifact. Peer Through the Depths, I don't have the other cards in here that triggered to find the unspeakable, but this one's good, just being able to find a sorcery card. Consuming Vortex, this is an instant, return creature to its owner's hand. Obviously more expensive than an unsummoned, but it is an arcane and has the ability to splice on his arcane as well. Shard Convergence, just mana fetch in a 5-color deck. Ether Shockwave, fantastic, especially since I'm running all spirits and very few of my opponents are ever running spirits. This artifact right here, really good for making your spells cost less and your spirits to get pumped up. Wargate, this is just purely for versatility, being able to go in and grab any permanent or any card with converted mana cost, however much you pay. You can usually grab just about anything with your deck in EDH unless you play that card early. And this is one of the superstars in the deck, Conflux, one of the best multicolored cards there is because you can fetch so many cards with it. And lastly, Time of Need. Most of the time I use this to grab the white Myojin when I need to wipe the board, but there's a couple of other options as well. Thanks for watching CMDR decks. Please subscribe and favorite.